Tropical storm Kabayan forms a significant rain and wind threat to the Philippines' southern regions at this time. So earlier today, Tropical Storm Jelawat was designated by the JMA, and it was also given the name of Kabayan by the PAGASA, the Philippine Met Office, and it is moving towards the Davao region and the Mindanao region in the Philippines, the southern extremities of the nation, where it will be making a direct landfall tonight and into tomorrow morning. If you are brand new to the Force 13 channel, please do consider subscribing. It really does help us out a lot, and leave a like on the video while you're at it. Tell us how we can improve in the comments section down below. But your latest update on Tropical Storm Jelawat brought to you by Force 13, beginning now. So let's take a look at where the storm is. It's just offshore from Davao at this time. It's with winds of 40 knots, that's 45 miles an hour. They're gusting to 55 knots at this time, so it does have damaging winds around the center of circulation. It is expected to hold its intensity as it approaches the southern Philippines over the coming couple of hours, and it will likely strengthen in the South China Sea. There'll be more on that later on in the video, but right now the main threat that we're looking at is rainfall. A lot of it is forecast up to 300 millimeters over the coming 24 hours in some locations, and there will be places that pick up to 500 millimeters. That's 20 inches of rainfall. So here's a look at our forecast track map with the associated intensity of the storm. It's meant to make landfall as a tropical storm. It could weaken a little bit, it could strengthen a little bit. We're not 100% sure at this time. It'll then move inland, weaken a little bit, and then as it moves back out over the South China Sea, we'll likely see this storm pick up tropical storm status again, and it could get to a peak intensity of around 50 knots before it weakens again due to wind shear as it passes south of Vietnam and moves towards Thailand and that sort of region. Now, its remnant energy is being forecast to become something in the North Indian Ocean. That has since died off on the forecast models, but once again we could be seeing something from this system as it approaches Thailand, and it will certainly be a rain threat for that part of the world. Here's a look at the model diagnostics with the forecast track map from the JMA on the top left and the PAGASA on the bottom left. You can see the storm is expected to peak with peak winds of around 55 to 60 knots in the South China Sea. That's very bullish in my opinion. It will be a struggle for this storm to get over 50 knots of intensity, and the most likely location for it to do that will be before its Philippines landfall. Now, although the storm is possibly strengthening right now, it isn't looking too good in the satellite imagery, which we'll get to later on, and that's why only Signal 1 warnings are in effect for Mindanao and Davao, and also into a little bit further north up towards Surigao City, and then probably up to Tacloban as well. That's where we've got the Signal 1 warnings. Signal 2 warnings are a possibility from this system, but it would have to get a little bit stronger for that to come onto the radar. PAGASA not expecting this to become a tropical storm before its landfall, but expecting it to be a tropical storm at peak intensity in the extreme far south of the South China Sea. And let's take a look at the forecast models. This is the Access G3 from windy.com. You can see the storm moving over as a very broad sort of low pressure system. It's hard to call that a tropical storm on the forecast models, over the southern regions of the Philippines into sort of actually just north of Malaysia, in fact, and then into the South China Sea, where it becomes a substantial tropical storm. Peak winds of around 45 to 50 knots before wind shear really looks to get at it, and it falls apart completely before it makes landfall in Malaysia, sort of towards the east of Kuala Lumpur, before moving, or its remnant energy at least, moving over Indonesia and then into the North Indian Ocean. Playing that run through again just faster, you can see peak winds across the Philippines barely tickling 35-40 knots, so wind gusts won't be all that damaging, and considering this part of the world is built for strong typhoon activity, it's unlikely to see much wind-related damage. The real threat from this storm remains rainfall, but still be on the lookout for damaging winds, and if you do live under big trees that are prone to falling, I would recommend evacuating from that area, because winds will likely whip up a little bit of tree damage and power line damage. You know the sort that I'm talking about, so stay safe out there, because it still could bring damaging winds ashore. Now let's take a look at rainfall. I've been hammering this on as the most significant threat from this system, and sure it is. Up to 400 millimeters expected in some pockets of the northern regions of Davao and into Mindanao as this storm makes its passage through. Those black areas is 75 millimeters per hour of rain rates, so you could be expecting some locations picking up to 3 inches every single hour for a good half a day at least, especially as it enters the more mountainous terrain of the southern Philippines. Now, it will get more rainfall, or more concentrated rainfall, as it enters the South China Sea as its convection blows up, but but that will only be very isolated indeed and will hardly affect any land areas. But the key point to take away here is that widespread totals above 250 millimeters expected in the southern Philippines, and because of its onshore flow, areas like Tacloban, Catanduanes Island, and even up towards northern Luzon could be seeing rainfall totals over the next 5 days approach the 250 millimeter threshold. That's 10 inches. So flooding is certainly a risk across the eastern regions of the Philippines, especially in the southeastern pockets of the Philippines. We could be seeing some pretty significant flash flooding associated from this system, and flooding brings the risks of landslides, dam failures, all of that sort of stuff. Rivers could swell, so still a very significant threat from this system in the terms of rainfall, but right now it is not looking like it's going to be a world-ending storm, that's for sure. And even if it intensifies in the little time that it has before landfall, we're likely not going to be seeing too much change in the rainfall picture. But yeah, just to hammer home that point one more time, taking a look at the total accumulated precipitation rainfall for the next 5 days, you can see those blue areas, more than 100 millimeters of rain, those purple areas, more than 200 millimeters of rain, widespread totals around sort of Surigao City up towards Tacloban, over 100 millimeters, and some locations up to 250 millimeters. And as you extend further up around Cebu City, you're looking at, again, about 100 millimeters of rain. But flicking that to the 10-day forecast, and because of that onshore flow around sort of Wednesday next week, especially up in northern Luzon, you'd be seeing some locations pick up a meter of rainfall, 1,000 millimeters or 40 inches from this storm. And then across to Manila, another 100 millimeters, Catanduanes, another 100 millimeters, Legazpi actually 150 millimeters. And the rain doesn't stop there, it extends over into Vietnam, where 400 millimeters is possible in some locations as a result of this storm, or at least its inflow features, and that'll extend down into a sort of Singapore and Malaysia as well. Again, just significant showers and thunderstorms associated with this system, and they could amount to a pretty significant amount of rainfall. As you can see on the satellite imagery, there is a lot of thunderstorm activity associated with this system, but we're not expecting anything absolutely world-ending above 500 millimeters or something like that. Peak totals will probably be around that 20-inch or 500 millimeter mark. So we're looking at the satellite imagery right now. Now, the black areas are intense thunderstorms, which are concentrated around the center of the system, as you can see by those lightning strikes and flashes. You can see some of the inflow bands of the system towards the northern side of this storm. Those are some pretty intense thunderstorms as well, and they're just about to collide with the eastern parts of the Philippines coastline at this time, and those thunderstorms are just about to come ashore as well. So the heavy rainfall will be starting this evening around 7 to 8 p.m. local time, and it will continue into tomorrow afternoon. Looking at the visible satellite imagery now, and you can see towards the end of this loop, the center of circulation, it's quite defined, but it is still rather broad, and it is in the southeastern part of all of that convection there, so it is displaced from the center of circulation, but that doesn't mean that this isn't a tropical storm. So we're still likely seeing tropical storm force winds around the center of this system as it makes its final approach to the Philippines. Good banding features and some pretty strong thunderstorms towards the eastern side of the system that are just churning into the system, which means anywhere north of where this storm is going to be making landfall, you can expect a pretty significant amount of rainfall from this system in terms of pretty significant thunderstorms from this storm. So yeah, just once again from this loop, you can see some pretty strong thunderstorm activity around the center of the storm, pretty good outflow towards the southern side of the system. If this had a couple more days and conditions were more friendly for this storm, we could be really seeing a rapidly intensifying, possibly typhoon landfall on the Philippines, but thankfully it does not have the time to do so or to produce such scares that we've seen in recent years. It is very likely that Jelawat or Kabayan will stay pretty weak throughout the rest of its life. We're zooming right out and taking a look at Southeast Asia at this time, the Philippines centered over it. You can just see, look at those thunderstorms stretching right out down towards Micronesia. There is a lot of rainfall behind this system, and that's going to be driven ashore probably until Wednesday. So the Philippines are definitely not out of the blue, especially the southern regions of the Philippines, not out of the dark in terms of rainfall until about Wednesday or Thursday, when we'll start to see the significant amount of rainfall ease off. But anyways, that is the latest storm update that Force 13 has on Jelawat. Philippines name Kabayan. Make sure you're staying up to date with Pagasa, because they'll be releasing the latest warnings every now and then, and staying up to date with the JMA. Unfortunately, the JTWC is down, so we don't really have the best information available, or the most graphically, visually pleasing information available. You can also stay up to date with Force 13, because we've got the live cyclone tracker running right now. Make sure to tell us how we can improve in the comment section down below, leave a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel as well for more updates like this one. But that's all from me, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.